Hi everyone. Today we're starting with what may seem like a simple question. What is economics? Many people think that economics is just about money, finance, or the stock market, but that's actually not what economics is really about. At its core, economics is about decision making under constraints. It studies how individuals, firms, and governments allocate limited resources to satisfy competing wants. And everything in this course flows from that one central idea. Now, let's start with a scenario. Imagine a government that wants to spend more on hospitals, improve schools, invest in infrastructure, lower taxes, and increase defense spending. Every single one of these policies sounds desirable, but the government has a fixed tax revenue, a limited workforce, limited land, and limited capital. It cannot do everything at once, and this is not just a government problem, it's a universal problem. The reason economics exists is because we live in a world of constraints. If resources were unlimited, economics would not exist. There would be no trade-offs, no difficult decisions, and no competition. But resources are limited and human wants are infinite. Now, this brings us to the central concept of economics. Scarcity. Scarcity means that resources are finite, but human wants are infinite. It does not mean poverty. It does not mean shortage in the everyday sense. It means that at any given time, there are more desirable uses for resources than there are resources available. Even billionaires face scarcity. Why? Because time is scarce, attention is scarce, and investment opportunities are scarce. And even wealthy economies face scarcity. They still must decide, should we allocate more resources to healthcare, or to defense, or to environmental protection? Scarcity is universal, and once scarcity exists, something unavoidable follows, and that is choice. Because resources are scarce, every economic agent must choose. Firms must choose. Do we hire more workers or invest in automation? Governments must choose. Do we lower taxes or increase public spending? Students must choose. Do we revise or relax? These decisions are unavoidable, and importantly, choosing one option means not choosing another, which leads us to one of the most powerful concepts in economics, and that is opportunity costs. Opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative that is given up when a choice is made. Notice something important. The cost is not necessarily money. The cost is not regret. The cost is not something you didn't want anyway. The true economic cost of a decision is what you would have chosen instead. If a government spends £1 billion on defence, the opportunity cost might be improved hospitals. If a firm invests in machines, the opportunity cost might be hiring workers. If you spend 3 hours revising economics, the opportunity cost might be relaxation, training, or revising another subject. Opportunity cost forces us to think in trade-offs. And this is where economics becomes powerful because many people evaluate decisions only by visible costs. Economists always ask, what is being sacrificed? Now, scarcity forces societies to answer three fundamental questions: what to produce, how to produce, and who receives the output. What to produce means, should we produce more luxury goods or more basic necessities? How to produce means, should production be labor intensive or capital intensive? Who receives the most output means, how is income distributed? Who benefits from production? Different economic systems answer these questions differently. Markets use prices, command economies use central planning, most modern economies are mixed. But all must answer these three questions because scarcity makes them unavoidable. Now, let's consider who actually makes these decisions. There are three main economic agents. First, households. Households are both consumers and workers. They decide what goods to buy and where to supply labor. Second, firms. Firms produce goods and services. They aim to maximize profit. They decide how much to produce and at what cost. Third, governments. Governments regulate markets, provide public goods, redistribute income, and attempt to correct market failures. Each agent operates under constraints, each faces opportunity costs, each must make trade-offs. And economics is divided into microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics focuses on individual markets and decision making. It studies supply and demand, price determination, elasticity, tax incidence, and consumer and producer behavior. It asks questions like, why do prices rise? How does a tax affect consumers versus producers? Why do some goods respond more to price changes than others? Microeconomics analyzes behavior at the margin, meaning small changes in decisions. It is highly analytical and often diagram based. This course begins with microeconomics because it builds the foundation of economic thinking. And on the other hand, macroeconomics looks at the economy as a whole. Instead of analyzing one market, it examines economic growth, inflation, unemployment, fiscal policy, and monetary policy. It asks, why does an economy grow over time? What causes inflation? Why do recessions happen? Macroeconomics focuses on aggregates, total output, total income, and total employment. Micro is about individual behavior, macro is about overall performance. Both are interconnected. One final distinction is between positive and normative economics. Positive economics describes and explains what is. For example, a tax increases prices. An increase in demand raises equilibrium price. These are objective, testable statements. Normative economics involves value judgments. For example, taxes are unfair. Education should be free. These statements reflect opinions and ethical beliefs. Good economists try to separate positive analysis from normative judgment. They analyze consequences before debating values. Now, let's take a look at an applied example, education policy. Imagine government decides to introduce a tax on private schools. First, we can ask a positive economics question. Will the tax increase prices? Will fewer students attend private schools? These are questions about what will happen. They describe and explain the effects of a policy. But we can also ask a normative economics question. Is this tax fair? Should education be taxed at all? These are value judgments. They are about what ought to happen. This example shows us something important. Economics helps us understand the consequences of decisions, but it does not tell us what is morally right or wrong. It gives us the tools to think clearly about trade-off and choices, and this is what economics actually do. Now, to cap it all off, what does economics actually do? Economists do not simplify memorizing diagrams. They evaluate trade-offs. They understand that every policy creates winners and losers. Every intervention has unintended consequences. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Economics does not tell us what to value. It tells us the cost of what we value. Now let's bring everything together. Economics exists because of scarcity. Economics forces choice. Every choice has an opportunity cost. Economics studies how individuals, firms, and governments make decisions and what consequences follow. Next lesson, we will introduce the production possibility frontier. This model visually represents scarcity, trade-offs, and opportunity costs. And once you understand that diagram, you begin to think like an economist. Thank you very much.